What's up geeks, and welcome to the channel. In the previous video of the series, we introduced the Jackson library and identified several approaches to map a JSON string to a Java object and vice versa. Today we'll dive deeper into the library by exploring Jackson annotations. Let's first take a look at the serialization annotations and start with the @JSON_AnyGetter annotation. This one allows you to serialize a map field as a standard properties. For example, take this bank account class and object. When we serialize an instance of this entity, we get all the key values in the map as standard plain properties, as you can see in front of you. Make sure to use the annotation on the getter of the map and not on the field, as if you do the latter, Jackson will serialize it both as a map and as an individual properties, which is the default behavior if you choose not to use the annotation at all. Next is the @JSON_Getter annotation, which marks a method as a getter method if the name you are using is not conventional. In this example, we specify a method name as the getter method of the holder name property of a given bank account, and because we already have a normal getter as we are using the @DataLombok annotation, when serializing the object you see, Jackson will use both the holder name and the name leading to the output you see. Okay, we can use the @JSON_property_order annotation to specify the order of properties on serialization. In this example, the holder's name will show first, then the balance, and finally the ID as specified. We can also set its alphabetic parameter to true to order the properties alphabetically. In that case, the output of serialization will be as you can see in front of you. Next is the @JSON_RAWValue annotation, which instructs Jackson to serialize a property exactly as is. In the following example, we use the @JSON_RAWValue to embed some custom JSON in our bank account class. As you can see, the JSON property, which is a string, was serialized as a JSON itself. Now, the @JSON_Value indicates a single method that the library will use to serialize the entire instance. In the example you see, the whole bank account class will be serialized with the holder's name only. So when we try to write the object's value as a string, Geekific will be the only output of the serialization. Okay, now if you want to wrap the object you are serializing, you can make use of the @JSON_RootName annotation to specify the name of the root wrapper to be used. To make use of this annotation, on top of specifying the name, you'll have to enable wrapping in the object mapper you are using, as you can see in this example. By default, the name of the wrapper would be the name of the class. By using the annotation, we get to pick the name we want, as you can see. Next is the @JSON_Serialize, which indicates a custom serializer to use when marshalling the entity. Let's look at a quick example. We're going to use @JSON_Serialize to serialize the balance property with the custom serializer. Here we are simply returning the value multiplied by 97%, which is not a best practice by the way, but for the sake of this video it will do. As you can see, the output of the JSON string is as expected. Okay, now that we've covered serializing, let's explore the Jackson deserialization annotations and start with the @JSONCreator annotation. This one is used to tune the constructor used in deserialization. It's very useful when we need to deserialize some JSON that doesn't exactly match the object we need to get. Say we need to deserialize the JSON string you see in front of you. However, there is no name field in our bank account entity. There is holder name field, and we don't want to change the entity itself. What we need is a little more control over the unmarshalling process by annotating the constructor with @JSONCreator and using the @JSONProperty annotation as well. Note that the same result will be obtained if we add the @JSONProperty directly to the field in question, but this way it will affect the serialization and deserialization process. By adding it to the constructor, only the deserialization is affected. Next is the @JSON_AnySetter, which, similar to its getter counterpart, allows us to use a map as standard properties. On deserialization, the properties from JSON will simply be added to the map. To do that, we created an add method that takes in a key and a value and annotated it with the @JSON_AnySetter annotation. Every JSON attribute that cannot be mapped to a property inside the class will then be inserted in the map we have, as you can see in this example. Now, the @JSONSetter is an alternative to @JSONProperty that marks the method as a setter method. Similar to the @JSONGetter, this one only affects deserialization. This is incredibly useful when we need to read some JSON data, but the target entity class doesn't exactly match that data. and so we need to tune the process to make it fit. Okay, now just like the @JSON serialize, we have the @JSON deserialize, which indicates the use of a custom deserializer. Here we're going to use @JSON deserialize to deserialize the balance property with a custom deserializer, and we are simply returning the value multiplied by 2. When we try to deserialize this JSON string with the help of the same main code we've been using, the output will be as expected. Now, the last deserialization specific method I want to tackle is the @JSON alias annotation, which defines one or more alternative names for a property during deserialization. In our bank account class, we specified that the holder's name property can be deserialized with any of the following strings, and when provided with the JSON UC, Jackson will successfully deserialize it into a bank account object. Okay, serializing and deserializing is nice, but what if we wanted to explicitly include or exclude certain attributes from either of these processes? Which annotations should we use? First, the @JSON ignore properties is a class-level annotation that marks a property or a list of properties that Jackson will ignore. Let's take a look at a quick example in which we try to ignore the property balance of our bank account class. As you can see, the balance attribute was ignored from both the serialization and deserialization processes. To ignore any unknown property in JSON input without exception, we can set the ignore unknown parameter to true, as you can see here. The unknown stuff parameter was ignored as expected. Now, similarly to the annotation, the @JSON ignore annotation is used to mark a single property to be ignored at the field level. In this example, we made use of this annotation to ignore the balance property as we previously did, but this time at field level. The third and last annotation we are going to discuss around including and excluding fields is the @JSON include annotation, which is used to exclude properties with empty, null, or default values. In this example, and because both the ID and balance attributes are set to null, when trying to write the value of the account we have as a string, the returned string will only contain the holder's name attribute. In the last part of this video, I want us to take a look at the more general and important annotations Jackson has to offer. And let's start with the basic one, the @JSON property annotation, which indicates the property name in JSON. In the bank account example you see, we made use of this annotation to change our holder's name to simple name in the serialization and deserialization processes. Next is the @JSON format annotation, which specifies a format when serializing date-time values. In the following example, we used the @JSON format to control the format of the creation date attribute. So in the JSON file, we provided a string, but when reading that value into an object, it was correctly mapped to the data class. The next two annotations are not well known, but trust me, extremely helpful. The @JSON managed reference and @JSON back reference annotations. They can handle parent-to-child relationships and work around loops. In the following example, notice that if it weren't for these annotations, Jackson would have thrown a Stack Overflow exception as one entity references the other and vice versa. Because if Jackson was normally working with an object, it will have to work with the inner bank account object inside the sub-accounts, leading to a cycle. On the other hand, the @JSON identity info annotation indicates the property to be used when serializing or deserializing values, like when dealing with infinite recursion types of problems like we just did. Using the same main method and by just adding these annotations to both classes, as you can see, we obtain the JSON in front of you as a result. Finally, to end this video, let's see how we can disable all Jackson annotations. This is done by using the disable mapper feature.use annotations of your object mapper as shown in the following example. However, the use of this method is deprecated, so if you want to disable Jackson annotations, it is a better practice to just remove them from your classes. So, that's it for this video. I hope it was helpful. Thank you guys for watching, take care, and I will see you in the next one.